Hello, listeners. This is Brandon Elrich with Brandon Elrich is So Gay. This is episode 16 of season 1. I don't know what seasons are really when it comes to podcasts. Television seasons seem to start usually in the fall and run through the end of the spring. Big Brother's through the summer. Mine, I started in January of this year, so my seasons will probably coincide with the years. I don't know. That makes sense to me. Anyway, before I get started, I want to ask that you please become a paid subscriber to my Substack publication. I hope you're enjoying my content so far, and if you do, I could use your support. You can do it for as little as $2 a month or $20 for the entire year. Links will be in the podcast notes. I know I make it seem easy, whatever. But it does take a lot of time, preparation, editing, uploading, scheduling, and coming up with ideas. I want to continue offering it for free, so if you're in a position to contribute financially, I would really appreciate it. In last week's episode, my friend Allie and I talked about toys and masturbation. She said she'd like to cuddle and other things with a guy, but for sex, to achieve an orgasm, she'd prefer a toy. It got me thinking about sex and intimacy and how we see or think about each of them. In previous episodes, I've talked about my experiences downloading various dating apps and some of my insecurities, hang-ups, etc. When you create a profile on OkCupid, you can answer questions to help match you with someone who answers similarly. The more questions you agree on, the higher your match percentage with that person. Obviously, they don't ascribe to the idea that opposites attract. And by the way, the match percentages haven't worked for me so far. I've matched with guys like at 98% a few times, and it hasn't worked out. So, going back to the questions, one of them was, are sex and intimacy the same thing? In case you don't know, the answer is no. This isn't an opinion type question. If they were the same, we wouldn't have two different words for them. You can put a qualifier on it by saying sex is physically intimate, but intimacy itself is a feeling of closeness and connection in interpersonal relationships. I was surprised, though I guess I shouldn't have been, by guys who answered yes to that question, saying that sex and intimacy are the same. You can have sex without intimacy, and you can have intimacy without sex. In a romantic relationship, my goal is to have both. When I was in my 20s, I had a girlfriend for about 6 months or so. That was at a time when I was trying to be quote-unquote normal. I foolishly thought that I might be able to get married to a woman, have kids, and live a happy, normal life. You may not know me personally, but the title of my publication should tell you that sure as hell wasn't going to happen. Even though we didn't have sex, we had what I would call an intimate relationship. I wasn't in love with her, but I loved her and her family. I cared for her, and I enjoyed spending time with her, talking, hanging out. I've also had many encounters, because I can't call them relationships, when I had sex with a guy without intimacy. With some of them, I didn't even know their names. If I did, I can't remember them now. But through some therapy and a great deal of introspection, I realized that I was using sex as a replacement for intimacy. One way I knew this was how empty I felt after each one-night stand. People do this with so many things. They use alcohol and or drugs in place of medication. I'm sure you've probably heard the term self-medicating. My boyfriend Joe used drugs because he got so stressed out with life and responsibilities. He often said that he didn't like being an adult. He was barely 10 years into adulthood when he died. I can't speak about alcoholism or drug addiction from my personal experience as far as me using it. I mean, I've had alcohol, I've had drug, THC, at least marijuana. I've only witnessed it in others as far as the addiction, but I can understand it. I can at least empathize. Like I said, I've done it with sex, one night stands. I didn't feel I'd ever find someone I could spend the rest of my life with, so I just found guys who wanted short-term fun, just sex. And the sex was good sometimes, but that euphoric feeling didn't last long. You might be able to get away with having sex with many different partners or even the same partner, like in a friends with benefits kind of situation. But if intimacy is truly what you're after, you'll be in a perpetual state of seeking that feeling. If you have a romantic partner, that intimate feeling is more sustainable. Now, I'm not saying you have to have a partner to be happy. And I'm not saying you must have sex to be happy. Everyone's different. My needs aren't the same as others. In his hierarchy of needs, Abraham Maslow says that every human needs love and belonging. A small percentage of people don't fit that assertion, but for most of us, intimacy is an important piece of our foundation. Some are asexual, while some others don't get a sufficient amount of pleasure from sex. In last week's episode, my friend Allie said that she's never gotten as much pleasure from a guy's dick as she has from her rabbit, which is by the way, it's a sex toy, not a furry pet bunny, in case you're not familiar with the term. You can also have intimate relationships with your friends, which don't have to involve sex. I have an intimate relationship with Allie, as you can probably tell from our discussions on the episode where she's joined me. As close as we are, and as much as I care about her, I still feel a little bit of a void where a romantic partner would fit in. I can go out and have fun with friends, but I still go home alone. For a while, that's okay, but I get tired of it. I want someone to come home to besides my cats. I mean, they're great and all, but not the same as a human connection. I crave intimacy and sex. For me, using my hand or a toy does not feel as good. Also, when I have sex with someone I love or have an intense emotional connection, the sex is definitely better. My pleasure is intensified and the whole experience is awesome. My attraction level for the other person makes a huge difference. I've never understood choosing to have sex with someone you're not attracted to. For me, it's just not worth it. I need an intimate relationship. That's not to say I'm not content, and that may sound contradictory. Contentment is kind of a funny thing. To me, you can be content, but also strive for more. You can enjoy your job and be content with it while still vying for a promotion or a raise or trying to climb the corporate ladder or whatever. So I can say I'm content with my life because I'm not going to die or end it all if I have never find love. I have my cats, my family, my friends, my writing, all of which make me happy and keep me occupied. I go out and do things I enjoy that don't involve a romantic partner. But I can still work to be better or do better or get things I want. Now, those who don't try to better themselves or don't care if they ever find a higher level of satisfaction with their lives are living in a state of complacency. Contentment and complacency are not the same. Complacency, in my opinion, can lead to depression, especially if you're already prone to it. And that's something I can relate to. Now, having said that, yes, I'm still on Grindr and other dating apps, and I'm not above hooking up with guys because, like I said, a short night of sex, well, hopefully not too short, gives me a temporary feeling of faux or imitation intimacy. I always like using alliteration. But my ultimate goal is to find someone for a long-term relationship. I'd like to hear from you in the comments. Can you relate to these feelings? Do you use sex as a replacement for intimacy? I always respond to comments unless they're just intentionally rude or disrespectful. Then I'll probably just ignore them. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you'd enjoyed this. I'll remind you once again to click the like button on this post, subscribe using the links in the notes, and oh, by the way, if you become a paid subscriber, I'll have you on as a guest on my podcast if you're interested. One of my subscribers said she'd like to hear me and a straight guy comparing what turns us on, each on what gives us physical or sexual pleasure, or a bi guy. That might be interesting. So I'm looking for a guy to chat with in an episode. If you're interested, become a paid subscriber and send me a message. So until next time, say goodbye, Zach.